Due to financial constraints and the need for a second job, I found myself taking on the night shift at a local gas station. This decision led me down a path that would introduce me to a series of events, both strange and unsettling. Initially, my nights were spent consistently working during the late hours, with the hum of the fluorescent lights and the solitude of the dimly lit store becoming my companions. However, as the weeks turned into months, a new figure entered my nightly routine. A peculiar man, with an aura that seemed to match the odd hours he kept, began to frequent the gas station around 2 a.m. Standing tall at about 6 feet, he possessed an unkempt appearance accentuated by his long, unruly hair. His routine was consistent, always purchasing a tall can of alcohol before swiftly departing into the night. The man's presence was notable, not only for his regular visits, but also for the curious way he interacted with me. After some time, he broke his silence and inquired about my name. Upon learning it, he proceeded to repeat it, Rob, with an amused chuckle, reveling in the phonetic rhyme. With his purchase in hand, he would exit the store, engaging in conversations with no one but himself, the effects of alcohol clearly evident in his slurred speech and unsteady gait. As time progressed, my interest in this enigmatic character grew. I began to question the nature of his visits, particularly his consistent avoidance of purchasing gas despite his nightly presence. It soon dawned on me that his perpetual state of inebriation might have rendered him unfit to operate a vehicle safely. Thus, the mystery of his nightly visits unraveled, a puzzle piece clicking into place. He became a regular fixture, appearing nearly every night, each visit offering subtle variations. Some nights, he would be notably more intoxicated, while others would find him silently propped against a shelf, lost in contemplation without uttering a word. Nevertheless, his entrance was consistently marked by a casual greeting, a simple "Hey, Rod," serving as a nod to our shared connection, albeit one that felt increasingly unsettling. One fateful evening, a stormy night with rain cascading against the gas station windows, the chime of the front door announced another customer's arrival. Even before I looked up, an inexplicable premonition whispered that it was him, the peculiar man who had become an unexpected fixture in my nocturnal world. And to my astonishment, the premonition held true. There he stood, a more menacing presence than ever before. The man's appearance had shifted from mere peculiarity to something far more disconcerting. Drenched by the rain, he entered without any attempt at shelter, his gaze fixated intently on an unseen point on the wall. A mixture of anger and distraction seemed to swirl within him, a tempest of emotions barely contained beneath the surface. This encounter felt different, the air heavy with a sense of foreboding. Summoning my courage, I called out to him, my voice laced with genuine concern. His response was eerie in its detachment, as if his mind was far removed from the present moment. "I did something really bad," he confessed, the words hanging in the air like a leaden weight. Naturally, I inquired about the nature of his actions, a question met with a chilling response. He needed a place to hide. Intrigued yet undeniably uneasy, I watched as he navigated his way past me and ventured towards the restroom hallway. As he disappeared behind the wall, an unsettling sensation settled in the pit of my stomach. The atmosphere in the gas station had shifted, transforming from the mundane into something out of a suspenseful tale. Minutes stretched into an unsettling silence. The usual hum of the fluorescent lights seemed to intensify, casting elongated shadows that danced across the store's surfaces. The man did not emerge from the restroom, leaving me to wrestle with a growing sense of discomfort. It was in this tense stillness that the overhead lights suddenly flickered and died, plunging the gas station into darkness. Fighting back a rising tide of panic, I fumbled for a flashlight tucked behind the counter. With the flashlight's feeble beam guiding my way, I cautiously ventured towards the back of the store, where the inventory was stored alongside the control panel. The hallway leading to this area was the same one the restrooms were situated in, and as I passed by their slightly ajar doors, they remained devoid of any sign of the man's presence. Crossing the threshold into the back room, my heart raced in anticipation of what I might discover. Faint, rhythmic dripping sounds and the distinct squeak of wet shoes on linoleum reached my ears. My voice quivered as I called out his name, hoping for some reassurance in the darkness. My plea was met with an eerie response. The squeaking intensified, this time accompanied by an unsettling rasp. The beam of my flashlight swung toward the source of the sound, illuminating a chilling sight. There he was, the man, his eyes wide open and unblinking, lunging towards me with a guttural scream. Instinct overcame reason, and I pushed him away, stumbling back in my haste to distance myself from the unexpected assault. Adrenaline surged as I bolted back through the front door, the torrential rain now serving as a haunting symphony to the night's events. Grabbing my rain jacket, I sprinted to my car, fingers trembling as I dialed 911, desperation seeping into my voice as I relayed the situation to the operator. I remained on the line as a lifeline, seeking refuge from the overwhelming sense of dread that had taken hold. Police officers arrived on the scene, their flashing lights cutting through the storm's darkness. Together, we cautiously entered the gas station, the familiarity of the space now tainted by an unnerving tension. We located the man huddled in the back room, his demeanor confirming the influence of substances far stronger than alcohol. The details of his assault and threats were recounted to the officers, along with his cryptic admission of wrongdoing. The officers acted swiftly, apprehending the man and escorting him away from the gas station. It was only over a month later that the chilling truth emerged. The man's true identity was Martin, a name that had once been associated with a brutal and heinous crime. He had committed the murder of his ex-wife, an act that had likely transpired on the very night he had stepped into the gas station, his unsettling presence forever intertwined with that harrowing event. In the aftermath of this traumatic experience, the night shift at the gas station became an unbearable prospect. The shadows held secrets too daunting to confront, and the notion of occupying that space during the dark hours was simply too much to bear. The incident left an indelible mark on my psyche, cultivating an aversion to night shifts and a lingering unease about jobs that demanded my presence in those haunting hours. During my younger days, my friends and I used to embark on late-night drives for no specific reason. We found it thrilling to stay out until the early hours, hanging around parks or parking lots. Looking back, I now recognize it as a wasteful and unproductive use of time. Nevertheless, it did expose me to driving during off-peak hours, when the roads were more likely to be shared with intoxicated or unpredictable individuals. On a weekend night, approximately around 4 a.m., I dropped off a friend at their house and realized I needed to refuel before heading home. I had a preference for getting gas at night due to the minimal presence of other cars, which streamlined the process. So I pulled into one of my regular gas stations, conveniently situated not far from my parents' place. As I made my way to the payment kiosk, a short individual in a hooded garment walked past me. He suddenly halted, fixing his gaze on me. Intrigued yet slightly cautious, I inquired about his intent, but he remained silent. Brushing him off as a typical suspicious character, I proceeded toward the building. Inside, I settled the gas payment with the attendant and decided to buy a lottery ticket on a whim. With the transaction completed, I stepped outside and began filling up my tank. A quick scan of the surroundings confirmed my expectation. The area was deserted, as it usually was at that hour. With the refueling almost finished, I returned to my car and set off for home. However, midway through the journey, I heard a noise from the back seat. Instinctively, I glanced at the rearview mirror, only to be met with a chilling sight: a stranger in the back seat, staring directly at me. Overwhelmed by fear, I let out a piercing scream that seemed to drain the air from my lungs. Reacting swiftly, I slammed on the brakes and yelled at the intruder to get out. In a panic, I flung open the car doors and called for help, confident that the residents of nearby houses would respond. As anticipated, several porch lights flickered on, and doors creaked open as concerned neighbours emerged. The man hurriedly exited my car, leaving behind a threat before disappearing down the street. Rather than pursuing him, I directed my focus to the people who had come to my aid. They provided reassurance and checked on my well-being. I recounted the unsettling incident, highlighting the fact that a stranger had infiltrated my backseat. By that point, the culprit had vanished from sight, and I had no intention of searching for him. Expressing profound gratitude to the kind individuals who had intervened, I resumed my journey home, ensuring I didn't catch a glimpse of him again during the remainder of the drive. Undoubtedly, that encounter remains the most terrifying experience of my life. In the mid-1960s, in the Atlanta vicinity, an event took place that left an indelible mark on my memory. Back then, I was approximately 8 or 9 years old, and my father was employed as an educator in a suburban area quite distant from our home. Given that I attended the same school where he taught, I had the privilege of accompanying him on the daily commute. However, this necessitated rising before dawn to ensure an early departure. As part of our routine, we would frequently pause at a small, independently owned gas station, which was among the earliest to open each morning. During that era, gas stations offered full-service amenities, complete with attendants who would emerge to fill your fuel tank, clean your windows, and manage various other tasks. I distinctly recall the attendant carrying a wad of bills in his pocket and a coin-counting device fastened to his belt. Behind the gas pumps, there were compact restrooms, and due to the lengthy drive, I would often make use of the facilities whenever we stopped at this particular station. One pre-dawn morning, we arrived as usual, only to find the gas station utterly deserted. A haunting stillness enveloped the area, with only the occasional sounds of passing traffic punctuating the quietude. Neither the attendant nor any sign of activity was to be found, whether in the booth or anywhere else around the station. My father sounded the car horn a few times in an attempt to attract attention, yet received no response. We pondered the potential reasons behind this absence. Initially, my father posited that the attendant might be in the restroom. However, when he failed to materialize, my father surmised that car trouble might have prevented his timely arrival at work. We lingered for several minutes, yet no other vehicles arrived. I communicated my urgent need to use the restroom, but my father, recognizing the impracticality of waiting any longer, reassured me that I could avail myself of the facilities at the next station we encountered. Departing the vacant gas station, we remained perplexed by the enigma that had unfolded. A day or two later, my father stumbled upon a jarring article in the local newspaper. Filled with a mixture of astonishment and disbelief, he imparted the news to my mother and me. A gas station attendant's lifeless body had been discovered within the men's restroom of the very same station we have frequented. According to the article, the attendant had suffered a savage onslaught of multiple stab wounds. The prevailing motive seemed to be robbery, as all monetary bills and coins were conspicuously absent. Although the theft had occurred during the early hours, the stolen amount likely wasn't substantial. The article refrained from specifying the exact sum, but the implication was that the monetary value held little sway over the perpetrator. Contemplating this incident, I often speculate on the profound impact it would have had on my young psyche if I had insisted on using the restroom at that gas station, inadvertently unveiling the grisly scene of the slain attendant. Needless to say, our family never again set foot in that gas station. This incident occurred when I was 25 years old. I found myself driving from North to South Texas during the late hours of the night due to my work schedule. The majority of the journey unfolded along Route 281, a direct and straightforward route. However, staying alert was a struggle as my exhaustion from work weighed heavily on me. Starting the drive right after work had proven to be grueling, and to keep myself awake, I had to make frequent stops at various gas stations for coffee. During this specific instance, I felt drowsy for the third time and my need for both coffee and refueling became pressing. Thus, I pulled into the first gas station I spotted on the desolate side roads. Although I couldn't quite recall the precise brand of the gas station, it could have been something like Sunoco or Shell. The parking lot hosted just one other car, so I parked next to a pump and ventured into the store. Inside there were only two individuals, the cashier and another person who seemed to be pacing along the aisles. I headed to the coffee machine, poured a cup, and that's when the person who had been pacing approached me. His attempt at initiating a conversation was both pointless and unsettling. He oddly cautioned me about the hot coffee before departing. Given my lack of inclination, I chose not to engage and proceeded to pay for my coffee and gas at the cashier's counter. While I was in the process of paying, the same individual approached from behind and complimented the top I was wearing. He inquired about my late-night destination. By this point, my patience had worn thin, and I firmly requested him to leave me alone. The cashier, a middle-aged Hispanic man, seemed unsure of his grasp of English and was seemingly oblivious to the unfolding situation. Given his smaller stature, intervening appeared unlikely. Without acknowledging the man's comment, I exited the store without uttering another word and returned to my car. As I stood next to my car, preparing to refuel, I discerned the sound of the door opening again a few seconds after I had left the store. Glancing over, I saw the same individual eerily positioned on the other side of the pump I was using. Curiously, he wasn't filling up his car, and in fact, there wasn't even a car on that side. Feeling uneasy, I contemplated retrieving my pepper spray from the center console. Sensing my discomfort, the person asked, "Are you alone?" His question heightened the gravity of the situation. In an attempt to alleviate the tension, I replied, "No, my boyfriend is in the car." Opening the car door, I discreetly retrieved the pepper spray, keeping it at my side while pretending to focus on pumping gas. The person started moving around the gas pump, gradually approaching my side, and remarked, "I don't see anyone in the car." Reacting swiftly, I aimed the pepper spray at him, prompting him to laugh nervously and step back. He claimed he was merely trying to converse, but he continued to move backward while maintaining his gaze on me. As I completed the task of pumping gas, I suddenly heard a clank and the flow of gas ceased. Realizing my tank was full, I needed to collect the change I was owed, which amounted to about $6. However, the person was positioned between the store and me, presenting me with a dilemma. Despite still holding the pepper spray, I decided to retrieve my change. With my arm raised, I remained vigilant while he continued to retreat, chuckling. Once I had my change, I glanced through the glass door into the parking lot before departing. The person was nowhere in sight, but I harboured concerns that he might be concealed. Cautiously, I stepped outside but remained on the sidewalk, surveying my surroundings. The person had vanished, suggesting he was likely hiding. Eventually, a pickup truck entered the parking lot and parked adjacent to a pump. The driver, a burly man with a beard, caught my attention, and I approached him seeking help. I asked him to check if there was a person hiding behind my car. Though puzzled, he agreed and proceeded to the other side of my car. Suddenly, he exclaimed, "What are you doing?" And the unsettling individual quickly retreated from behind my car, disappearing into the darkness surrounding the gas station. The helpful stranger stressed the importance of vigilance and urged me to stay safe in his distinct southern accent. Filled with gratitude, I hastily left the parking lot and continued the remainder of my journey. It became clear that the unsettling individual had been waiting for an opportunity to exploit me as soon as I unlocked my car doors. This realization deeply unsettled me, and the memory of the experience lingered uncomfortably.